Hey guys, Justin here. I wanted to take a quick second and let you know about Growth Now Movement Live, coming to Reading, Pennsylvania, May 30th to June 1st. This event is going to feature some of my top guests like Fabio Viviani from America's Top Chef, best-selling author and future board expert Sarah Centrella, Albie Manzo from Real Housewives of New Jersey, and many, many more. This is going to be a game-changing event. It is truly going to be a day-long rock concert for entrepreneurs, forward thinkers, and people who are ready to take their life to the next level. So if that's you, head over to gnmlive.com and grab your tickets today because prices are going up soon. Again, go to gnmlive.com now to level up your life and truly create the life of your dreams. Can't wait to see you there. What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now Movement. This week, I get to sit down with the returning Ruth Soukup. Now, if you remember, Ruth is the New York Times bestselling author, a massive entrepreneur and product creator. And the last time she was on the show, we went through a crazy journey of life and overcoming adversity and multiple failed suicide attempts and all these insane things that then led her down to this road of prosperity and wealth and growth. And since we last spoke, Ruth has actually written a new book that's coming out shortly called Do It Scared, which is also the name of her podcast. And I had the opportunity to get an advanced copy of the book, and it is a game changer, to say the least. So we talk about a number of the different things that are in the book in this episode about how you can truly overcome fear to then go create the life of your dreams. And I think you guys are absolutely going to love the fact that I brought Ruth back on. This conversation is game changing. So without further ado, let's get into this episode with Ruth Soukup. Ruth, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me back. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cool part is, and I didn't even talk to you about this before, but me being on your show and you being on my show, there's become this great synergy of our listeners. And I hear from a lot of them being like, hey, I heard you on Ruth's show. I loved it, and so on and so forth. And so I think that our messaging really comes in line. And back when you were on the show months ago, we talked about Doing It Scared, obviously the name of your podcast, and now the name of your new book that's coming out in May. And I got an advanced copy of this book, and I'm really excited about talking a little bit more in depth about what you have here in the content, because it's a game changer. It really is. But why don't you just take a couple minutes and just reintroduce yourself to my audience about who Ruth is today, and then we'll get into the book.
Of course. Yeah, so my name is Ruth Soukup, and I am the founder of Ruth Soukup Omnimedia, which is my online media company. And we do a lot of different things, but mostly our mission is to provide practical tools for home and business along with the motivation to use them. So we do that by focusing primarily in 4 different areas. Lifestyle, which we do through my blog, Living Well, Spending Less. Business, which we do through Elite Blog Academy. Productivity, which we do through our Living Well Planner. And then finally, motivation, which happens at Do It Scared, the podcast, and now Do It Scared, the book.
I love it. So why Do It Scared? Why is that such an important message to you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I've been pretty much afraid my entire life, and especially my entire adult life. So I don't know how you feel, but fear has been a recurring theme in my life for so long. But not just for me. What I started noticing with the people in our communities, both at Living Well, Spending Less and Elite Blog Academy, that fear was this recurring theme that seemed to come up for so many people all the time. And I am a huge believer in setting big goals for your life, making big dreams, going after them, whether you're talking about paying off debt or losing weight or starting your own business, any of those things. But as I would talk to people about this idea, you got to think big, you got to set big goals, I'd have so many people who would come to me and say things like, Ruth, you talk about this, but I don't know how. I don't know how to think big. I'm so afraid. I feel like I've been sitting on the sidelines of my own life. I see all these other people jumping in, going after it, achieving their goals and dreams, doing big things. And I don't even know who I am. I just want something. And I'm so afraid. And it got me so curious about this fear because I knew that feeling, and do it scared has been sort of my own motto for so long in my life as this like personal reminder of courage doesn't mean you're never scared. Courage is taking action despite your fear. And so I started digging deeper, and I ended up starting to ask some questions, and that turned into a whole study on fear that I had no idea it was going to snowball into what it did become. But we ended up surveying more than 4,000 people, so many people that I had to hire a whole team of researchers to help me go through all the data. And through all that, we made some pretty astounding discoveries about fear and the way that it manifests itself in our life. And that's sort of the jumping off point for the book and the podcast and all the other things that I talk about.
Yeah. So what's your take on fear? Like, why do you think that there's these things that we're afraid of? Like, why is it that we have to have these fears, and why is it that we're afraid to step into it? Like, before I hit record, we were talking about my event and how like I'm almost sold out and I'm still afraid. Like I've been having, I didn't tell you this, but I've been having reoccurring nightmares of people not showing up. There's still a great fear in this whole entire thing.
Yes.
So why is that a thing for human beings, do you think?
I think it probably started as a survival mechanism, and it's so ingrained into us. And for the most part, like fear is a survival mechanism. It's what protects us, right? It's what keeps us safe. And it's even like considered a sign of mental illness if somebody is not afraid. It's normal and healthy to have fear. But there's also an unhealthy kind of fear, the fear that holds us back. And that's primarily the type of fear that I was interested in exploring and finding out more about, because, it's not phobias. It's not a fear of spiders. It's the fear that keeps us stuck, that keeps us in place, that keeps us from taking risks, from stepping outside of our comfort zone, and from actually going after those big goals and dreams in our life. And what we discovered through this whole process of asking all these questions and studying fear in people's lives is that we all experience fear in different ways. It looks very unique to each one of us. But there are some patterns that start to come into play. And we discovered there's these 7 fear archetypes, or these 7 unique and distinct ways that fear tends to manifest itself in our lives. And for each person, we all probably have a little bit of each of the archetypes, but generally there's 1, sometimes 2, sometimes even 3 that might be a little bit more prominent. And so when you start to identify those specific fears in your life, that's when you can start to do something about them. Because otherwise, it's sort of like when you go to the doctor and you tell the doctor, doctor, I don't feel good. What is the doctor going to do for you? The first thing that the doctor has to do is figure out what's wrong with you, right? Is to give you the diagnosis, because without the diagnosis, there can be no cure. And fear sort of works the same way. Once you start to see these patterns in your life, that's when you can do something about it. So when you say that you are having recurring nightmares about people not showing up, I would say that your fear archetype is probably the same as mine, which is the outcast archetype, because the outcast archetype fears rejection. That's the deepest fear for the outcast. It's this fear of rejection. And so for the outcast, a lot of times you will reject other people. The way it manifests a lot of times for the outcast is that you'll reject other people before you can be rejected, or you have this sort of need to prove yourself. So a lot of entrepreneurs actually are outcasts.
That's so true. Like when I think about the archetypes, I'm definitely the outcast, right?
Yes.
I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of all that stuff. I'm also a self-doubter.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm enough. And it's so weird because like a lot of these resonate with me in like my romantic life, which is funny.
But that's funny.
But in business too, like the self-doubter, I mean, the reason I had a co-host on the podcast when I started is because I was afraid of not having enough content, not being enough for the people listening. Like, who am I to do this?
Yes.
And so do you find that those two go hand in hand a lot?
Yes, absolutely. But you know what? Everybody has, it's sort of like fingerprints. Everybody has their unique makeup. And it's really interesting. We've now had I think over 8,000 people take the final version of the fear archetype assessment. We did a beta version where we were testing it out and tweaking it and stuff. And we had about 3,000 people take it originally. And then we worked on it, refined it. We had psychologists like going through all the questions to make sure that they were asked in a way so there's no bias and that you're asking the questions multiple times to confirm answers and all. There's so much science that goes into these assessments. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But ultimately now I think we've had 8 or 9,000 people take the final version so far. And it's so interesting to me to see just everybody's fear is a little bit different. There are some that are more common and more prevalent, like the procrastinator, for instance, is one of the most common fear archetypes. And yet, even if your top archetype is the procrastinator archetype, that your second and third might be different than other people. And the way that those interplay and work together really is what makes your fear unique. And the interesting thing about that too is that because we all experience fear a little bit differently, we think that we're the only ones, but we also think that like we're the only ones that are feeling that way, but we also don't understand that the way that we're experiencing life isn't necessarily truth. We start to experience it as truth, and we assume that the rest of the world sort of has the same worldview or that feels the same way about truth. So it's this funny thing. We feel like we're all alone, and yet everybody else is the same. And both those things are not true. And the way that we're experiencing it, because so much of it happens unconsciously and subconsciously, that's why it's so important to identify it. Because once you identify it, then all of a sudden it's like those blinders are taken off, or whatever was happening subconsciously is now happening consciously. And so you can say, oh my goodness, I think I'm being rejected right now, but actually this is just my fear of rejection that is making me feel this way. It's funny because my husband is an outcast also. And the way it manifests for him is a little bit different for me. So I'm very afraid to ask for help, but my husband automatically feels like everybody is rejecting him no matter what. And so since I've been doing this work, we've had like such a framework within how to talk about it, and to realize for both of us, like we're both like not afraid of being rejected, but in very different ways.
Yeah, that's just so crazy. So can people go somewhere and take this test?
Yes. So you can go to our website at doitscared.com and take the fear assessment. And it's free to take the assessment, and it'll give you your top archetype, and which is really useful. But then we have a premium version of the assessment that will actually show you how you score on all 7 of the archetypes. And for your top 3, it will talk about how those 3 interplay together. So that's really, really valuable. And normally that's $15, but we actually right now, if you pre-order Do It Scared, you can get our book bonuses, and then you can get that premium assessment as one of the book bonuses. So it's a really great opportunity to get the premium assessment for free.
I love that. And how long does that go until?
You can get it until the book comes out, which is May 21st.
Okay. Awesome.
So go ahead and order as soon as you can.
Yo, for sure. And guys, let me tell you, I mean, I've read the book. It's phenomenal. And like what she's talking about now is really about self-awareness, right? Like understanding who we are and why we are, which is the first step, in my opinion, to be able to step forward into who you're supposed to be. And I think that's huge. And just thank you so much for putting that assessment out there, because it's needed for so many people to realize that, like, hey, there's a lot of people that are very similar to me, and it's okay that I'm this way. Like, that's a massive step forward.
Thank you. Yes, it's been so neat to see people's responses to this assessment, and to see how much of an impact it's having. Just in the small number of people that we've had take it so far, of people like going, oh my gosh, I never realized this about myself, that I didn't even know that this was what my fear is. And yet the assessment nailed me. We've had so many people say, I've never had any sort of assessment or anything like this nail me the way that this did. And now I can, it's like your eyes are opened, and all of a sudden you realize like you do have the power to not let fear hold you back in life, that there is something that you can do about it, and that you don't have to stay stuck anymore. So it's so empowering. And that's been so neat to see. It gets me really fired up.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. And, the one part of the book that for me personally stuck out a lot was your principles of courage.
Yes.
Because that's the hard part, right? Like,
yes.
How do I then step into my fear and start living it, whether it's to write a book, a blog, start a podcast, do a live event, potentially book tours all over the country, whatever, which we talked about the last time. This is super scary. How do we step into that? And you've really kind of broken down in a number of chapters, like, how do we start to embrace the fear and make it a part of our life and just understand it's going to be there and move forward with it?
Yes. Well, that's step 2. Exactly. So step 1 is the identity piece. You have to have the diagnosis before you can have the cure. But then the next step is then starting to work on the cure. And it starts with your mindset. It starts with the way that you're thinking about fear. And you have all these core beliefs that have been happening in your head automatically without you even realizing it. It's all happening subconsciously. It's, the fear that I'm not good enough, or the fear that I might make a mistake, or the fear I might be rejected, all of those things that have been happening up until this point without really realizing it. And yet there's a huge piece of your life. So then if you want to defeat those, you have to be able to replace those with something. And that's where the principles of courage come in. Having this new set of core beliefs that can help guide you and help sort of shift your thinking so that you're still going to have fear. Do it scared doesn't mean like get rid of all fear in your life. It means you still feel it. It's still there, but you are going to be taking action anyway, despite your fear. And that starts with the mindset shift.
Yeah. And so what are you afraid of right now that you're doing anyway?
Well, we talked a little bit about this. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. But right before we started recording, I shared that launching a book is terrifying. And this is my 6th book. So it feels like so silly and stupid. And I get so mad at myself, and it feels a little ironic given that the title of the book is Do It Scared. And yet anytime you are putting yourself out there into the world, anytime you're doing something new, anytime you're taking a risk. And I mean, in this case, I've been working on this project for 2 years. We've invested tons of money into all the research and the assessment and all of the stuff with the thinking that I think there's something to this. I think this is something that can really make a difference in people's lives. And I do believe that. And yet when it all comes to this fruition point and it's about to happen, all I can think of is, oh my gosh, what if this is stupid? What if people read it and they don't get anything out of it? What if I'm a fraud? And then of course you go into that place and then because I'm an outcast, it's what if I'm rejected? What if nobody likes it? What if everybody hates me after this and they all reject me and I have to go crawl into a hole somewhere? So all of those things come up so often, and it's so crazy. And that's actually where, first of all, I'm very grateful for my husband that he's been doing this work by my side for a very long time, and he can give me perspective. But also, like you said, those principles of courage, those are core values for me. And I come back to them over and over again. And in fact, my husband and my kids, because I've been repeating them to them for so long, come back to me with the same things. Mommy, there are no mistakes, only lessons. That's what my kids tell me. That's what my husband tells me. And it's so true.
Now, out of the principles of courage, what most resonates with you? What is the thing that you say to yourself that breaks you out of the fear?
Probably that one. No mistakes, only lessons is a big one. Especially right now. Like what if it's terrible? Well, then it's terrible. Then I'll have learned something about it. Then I will know what didn't work, and I will know what to do better for the next time. I've made so many mistakes in my life. And when I can remind myself, and I sort of talk about that in that chapter, I talk about all of the gigantic life mistakes I have made up till this point.
By the way, guys,
also,
real quick, Ruth, I'm going to interrupt you. If you guys, if you want to hear about some of the life mistakes and the life journey that Ruth has been through, go back and listen to her other episode. She shares a lot of them there. And I think that this entire book and why Ruth is writing it will really resonate with you then. Okay. Sorry. Just wanted to add that.
Oh, no. Thank you for saying that. Yes. Yeah. We did talk about that last time. And I mean, just giant mistakes, from depression to getting divorced and filing for bankruptcy and so many things. And yet when I look back at all of these mistakes I've made in my life, I can also see how each one led me to the next step and was a catalyst for something that I needed to learn. And that was what brought me to the next thing until I've gotten to where I am today, where I'm not done making mistakes. I know, and my husband reminds me of that too. He says, well, honey, you're overdue for a big mistake. So maybe this is going to be it. But guess what? Probably won't be the biggest mistake you've ever made. So I think you'll be fine. And that is true. And I think everybody needs somebody in their life that will say things like that to you. Well, if it's a big mistake, so it is, but it won't be the biggest mistake you've ever made. Yeah. And so I think that one for me is a huge one. I think that just keep going piece is also for me such a huge one, because I think that's the story of my life. I think that I have learned if I just take one step and then another step and then another step, I don't have to have it all figured out. I just have to keep going and never, ever quit. And that is when I have moments like this of feeling afraid, that is my reminder, like just wake up in the morning, do your work, take one step, just get through today, and tomorrow is another day, and then get through the next day and you will be fine. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know exactly what's going to happen. Just take today one day at a time.
Yeah. I love all that. And like for me, when I look at the principles of courage, it's really always own it, because obviously when you're in control, when you say to yourself, at least I'm in control of all of this, it makes it easier to make choices. It makes it easier to do the hard things that you have to get through it when you're in complete ownership of everything.
Yes.
Now, somebody who is the outcast, I am terrified of embracing honest feedback.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you feel the same way?
Oh, yes. Because it feels like anytime you get that feedback, it feels like a personal rejection. It's hard. It's hard. But that's been something that I've really practiced a lot in my life. And or especially since starting a business. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to have people, and I have to continually remind myself that it's important and to keep seeking that out. I mean, even in writing this book, you have to get the honest feedback of having your book edited. Oh, let me tell you, there is nothing I hate more than the editing process. I hate having people tell me what's wrong with my writing. It's so hard. It's so hard. And yet that's what makes a good book, right? A good editor will make your book better. And that's how it is in life too. You need that feedback over and over and over again.
I feel bad for whoever writes my book. And my sixth grade English teacher will tell you the same thing. I still don't know where to put a comma, let alone anything else. So that's a whole nother topic.
I feel like sometimes you have to not overthink it. My college English professor told me I was the most grammatically lucky person that she had ever met, because when I got tested on grammar rules, I could not tell you a single rule. And yet writing, I would just write the way I still write that way. I write the way that I speak, and whether it's right, whether it's wrong, I don't really care. At some point you just gotta write what sounds like you, and assume that that's what's going to resonate for the right people.
Yeah. And that comes from a New York Times bestselling author, which is always refreshing to hear. So I love all of that. I mean,
yeah.
Well, the thing is with this book, I mean, obviously you can tell by how you talk about it. You can tell by how you talk about this message that it's truly a passion of yours. And it's truly your why. And I know in this book, you talk about finding your why and the importance of that. What is your why behind, pushing this message forward rather than just living it, taking it and giving it to others? What's the why behind that?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, honestly, so we talked last time about, a little bit about my story, and for those of you who haven't listened to that episode, I will give you the quick recap. But in my early 20s, I went through a really, really terrible depression. It was my senior year of college, and I started having memories of sexual abuse that had happened when I was a kid. And I didn't know how to handle it. I was also going through a really bad marriage. I was struggling with stuff with my mom, who was bipolar. So there was just a lot of different stuff going on. It was sort of like this perfect storm of stress and anxiety and depression and PTSD. And I ended up attempting suicide and ended up being hospitalized. I wasn't successful, obviously, and was hospitalized, and sort of that threw me into this 2.5-year downward spiral of really, really bad depression, self-harm, that I had multiple suicide attempts, one of which was so bad that I ended up in a coma on life support with less than a 10% chance of waking up. And the doctors called my parents and my family and told them to come and say goodbye, that there was no way I was going to wake up. And if I did, I would be permanently brain damaged. There was no hope. And then I woke up, and I wish I could say that was like the moment for me where it all turned around, but it wasn't. It was not my turning point. I still had a long ways to go to hit rock bottom, and then had to fight my way back from it. There was never one moment where it all got better. It was, like I said, step by step by step, one day at a time, one step at a time, one small improvement at a time over the course of many years. But later, after I started my business and sort of found my way back, got remarried, had kids, got my life back together, finally got it together. I felt very strongly called, and I don't know where you stand from a faith perspective. I am a Christian. I was not a Christian for a very long time when I went through all of this depression stuff, and basically completely turned my back on God and said, there's no such thing as God. I don't believe that. That's not for me. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And so, all of this stuff happened with my business, and it started to grow, and it became successful, and I had this audience. And there was a very clear moment for me where I felt God saying, and you can say higher power, whatever resonates for you. But for me, it was God, and saying, this is why I saved you all those years ago. This is what you're here for. You're here to tell your story. And so for me, that is my why. I have had to fight so hard to overcome fear in my life. And I know what that feels like. There is no terrifying feeling than to be 24 years old, divorced, bankrupt, lost all my friends. My arms and legs were all cut up and scarred from all the self-harm that I had done. I had no job. I had no hope. I had no future. I thought I had ruined my life, and literally, legitimately thought there was no way to recover from that. And yet here I am 15 years later, and I have a multi-7-figure business, a beautiful family, everything I could have ever wanted, and then so much more than that. And I know that I'm here to be the person who says, it doesn't matter where you are in your life right now, or how badly you feel like you've screwed up, or what issues you might be facing, or whatever it is. There is nothing so bad that you can't fight back from it, that you can't take one step at a time, that you can't push forward and create something amazing. It is there. I know, because I've done it, and I am here to show you how to do it too. And so for me, that's my why. That's my why. I am here to tell that story and to give people the hope that they can do it too.
I love all of that. And, I think finding your why is one of the hardest things for a lot of people. And then for other people, it slaps them in the face, kind of like yours did. And I feel like mine did too. It slapped me in the face in the rock bottom moment of like, this is it. Like, wake up, dude. Like you have this purpose and you have this message and you have all these things. And then your book comes into play because, okay, cool. Well, that all seems really scary. If it is from a higher power like God or source or energy or whatever, or it just feels right to you, like the next step is you're terrified to do it. And so I highly recommend you guys picking up this book because it'll help you get through that process of pushing through the fear that you've created for yourself. And sometimes the fear is bullshit. And we've made it up ourselves. So I think this book will definitely kind of give people that introspective view of like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, I am this type of way and that's okay. And now how do I push through it from there? And so I love all of this stuff that you're all about. Like for you writing this book, what kind of discovery did you go through while you were figuring all this out that kind of helped you in your process? Obviously, when you started writing the book, you've already created the success in your life, financially, happiness, all the love, you had all that stuff. But what did you discover in the process of this book?
Oh my goodness. I think I don't think I realized for myself what an outcast I really am and how much that was still impacting me. And because, you kind of think, oh, I'm good now. I've like figured out my life. I'm doing awesome. But it's been so interesting for me and so revealing to realize how much further I still have to go when it comes to that kind of stuff. I think, just even a few months ago. So we're talking about honest feedback. I write about this in the book. I have a group of entrepreneur friends. There's 4 of us total, 3 friends who we call each other our truth club. And, they're great. And we get together a few times a year and, just to have a sort of a mastermind, pure mastermind accountability group. And of course they've been with me a lot along the way as I've been writing this book and working on this message. And they took the assessment, the original version of the assessment, the beta version. And so they've known for a long time that I was an outcast. And so the last time we were together, we were talking a lot about one of my friends, Susie. She's like an expert at PR and pitching and putting yourself out there, like from a media perspective. And that's something that I've always really struggled with because it's potential for rejection, right? Like most times you pitch, you get rejected. And so I've always really avoided that in my business. Like 100%, I have avoided working with brands or other companies. I'd rather create my own products. I've avoided having collaborations with other bloggers or other entrepreneurs because it might mean having to reach out to people and ask for things. And I hate that. And I've avoided pitching myself to media or anything like that. And as we're talking about, Ruth, you've got an upcoming book. You need to be doing this stuff. You need to be reaching out to people. You need to be making these connections. And I was so resistant to it, to the point where my arms were crossed. We were meeting in my hotel room. My arms were crossed and I was like standing up and inching closer and closer to the door. My body language was so much like, I do not want to hear this. I do not want you guys to tell me what I need to do from this perspective because I hate it. Like the fear was so intense for me. They called me out so hard and there was yelling involved and it was intense. But finally, at the end of it, they said, you're making this too hard and you are holding yourself back and you are holding back your business because you are letting fear stand in your way. And if you are going to be legit about talking about doing it scared, then you need to learn how to get past this. And so they challenged me over the next 24 hours. I had to pitch 20 people who I knew were going to reject me. And they even made the list of the people that were going to reject me. And I was like, you guys, I cannot do this. I cannot reach out to these people. There's no way. I'm not going to do this. They're like, yep, you have to. And by the time you have pitched these 20 people, you will not be afraid of rejection anymore. Or at least you'll be like well on your way to being over this. So I'm like, are you serious? But let me tell you, I did it. I took their challenge. And not only was I not rejected by every single person, there were actually a few people who said yes, which was amazing because this was like, like a kind of a dream list.
Yeah.
And also, they were right. Like it cured me, like to some not that it's not still hard, but now I've realized just sort of like when we were talking about mistakes, when you realize you've made so many mistakes and everything you've learned from, I also realized like, if I could do that, then why can't I do it again? It didn't kill me. I'm fine. It wasn't that bad. And I can do it again and again. And I think every time you take a little step in the right direction and you prove to yourself that you have the ability to do something even when you are scared, it gives you the courage and the confidence to do it again. And it builds up that muscle so that you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And so it was a really neat lesson for me and just such a powerful reminder in my own life. Like this has only happened in the last couple of months. Like it's still there. It still happens. It's going to happen again and again. But because I put these safeguards in place, I know I also have good people and I'm willing to take that step.
I love all of that, especially like there were so many, like if people just hear the story of what you just shared of having this accountability group and allowing them to push you even when you don't want them to, like there's so much life advice in that story that people should take into consideration. Like if you don't have that circle, create that circle.
Oh my goodness. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Find those people who will be your biggest cheerleaders, but also like will not let you, like, because we all have that bullshit factor, right? We know how to make the excuses and we know how to make our excuses sound super legitimate. Like you can come up, if you are looking for an excuse, you will be able to come up with an excuse for anything in your life and nobody will blame you. And you can walk away feeling like, oh yeah, it's totally legit that I'm not doing this thing that I'm totally afraid of. I could come up with really good excuses for why I don't have time and it's not a good use of my time and the ROI isn't there. Oh, believe me, I had all of the excuses and they were all very legit. And for most people would have just said, oh yeah, sounds like you're really smart, because I can sound really smart sometimes. But when you can have people who will see through all that bravado and call out the real issue, like those are true friends and those are worth their weight in gold. Can't say that strongly enough. Find people who will push past and make you push past your fear to push you to be better.
So true. Ruth, I just want to thank you from a couple different levels. First, I'm not going to get into the 5 rapid fire questions because I didn't go back and listen to the ones I asked you, and I don't want to ask you the ones.
Okay.
But I wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing this, and not only that, but for writing this book of a message that people really need to hear. Because I think when you look at the end of our lives, if we look back at our lives and we regret so many things, it's because we were afraid to not try something new. We were afraid to not push ourselves. We were afraid of all these fear archetypes that you talk about. Like, we have to break out of that. And so you're creating the catalyst for so many people to really be able to do that. I believe in this book. I can see it becoming your second New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
I could see it happening without a doubt. And so guys, I highly recommend you going and grabbing this book, get it before May 21st. So then you get the free breakdown of the test that you can take online and so on and so forth. But Ruth, is there anything else you want to add? And then also, what are the specifics on how people can grab this book and connect with you?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for letting me come on here and share about this message. Yes, I do really believe that this message has the power to change people's lives. And we've already been seeing it in our community. And it's really powerful. I've been in the online world since 2010 and I'm passionate about, a lot of the different things that I do, but to see people push past fear, and finally do those things they've only been dreaming about is something that is just, it gives me chills, really, honestly. And it's incredibly humbling to realize just how flawed and fearful I still am. And yet to see that this message is one that's resonating with people, despite that, despite the fact that I'm still struggling with it it's not like sitting on a pedestal and saying, here, I've done everything right, now do it like me. It's saying, I'm still walking this journey, but here are the things that are working for me right now. And they might be working for you too.
Yes.
And to answer your question, you can find all the information about the book and the assessment and everything and all the bonuses at doitscared.com. So just go straight there to the website and everything is right there. You can actually order it anywhere books are sold. I believe it's cheapest at Amazon right now. So you can get it at Amazon. You just need to then take your order number and you fill in a little form and we will send the bonuses right over to you.
I love it. So I wrap up all these shows with the same question. So since I've already given you that question, I'm going to kind of alter it just a little bit. And that is, in the process of writing this book, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think just realizing that the fear never really goes away, but you do learn how to manage it and keep pushing past it. So I mean, that's all there really is to it. I mean, it feels ironic to talk about how fearful I am in writing and launching a book and about fear. And yet it's always going to be a part of us, but there are ways that you can still make an amazing life out of even being afraid. So do it scared.
No, I love it. And it's so true. Like we talked about that before I hit record. It's not called Become Unscared. It's called Do It Scared. And I love all of that. Ruth, thank you so much again for coming on the show a second time and just sharing your wisdom with my audience. This was a ton of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. And you got to come back to the Do It Scared podcast one of these days too.
Yeah, we can talk about how fearful I am of this event. That'll be great. That'll be great.
No, we're going to talk about how amazing it was.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ruth.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.